So today we have a special guest to the UATV studio, General Ben Hodges, a former US Army commander in Europe. I welcome you, Mr. Hodges.
Well, thank you for having me.
And there's plenty to discuss, important things. First is that Ukrainian soldiers feel the lack of equipment, in fact, American equipment and European one, how to manage Ukraine's needs in equipment with insufficient supplies from partners.
Well, of course, I also am embarrassed and disappointed that we, the United States, and our other allies and supporters of Ukraine have not delivered everything that was needed as quickly as was needed. I think despite all the good things the Biden administration did for Ukraine, it was never enough because the administration was not committed to helping Ukraine win. They just wanted to make sure Ukraine didn't lose, and that's not a good, that's not the right strategic approach. So I can only hope that Ukraine is able to continue to develop its own industry, that European countries will begin to increase what they provide, and that at some point the U.S. government under the Trump administration will also realize that it's in our interest to provide what Ukraine needs. But of course, today is the day after inauguration. Um, I'm not I'm not confident yet, but I don't think that Mr. Trump has decided himself exactly what he's going to do.
Thank you. And there have been a lot of talk about lowering the draft age in Ukraine, which is ambiguous decision because there's maybe slightly less a million of people aged from 18 to 25 in Ukraine, and much, much more from 25 to 35 or 40 years. And what is happening now is a slow stagnation with human resources because the war is almost 3 years, full-scale war is going on, and Russians are pouring in human resources, including North Korean troops. And as President Zelensky have said earlier, some brigades that exist now don't have all the equipment necessary. And that leads me to the second question. The Biden phrase, support Ukraine as long as it needs, versus Mr. Trump's one, they want to strike a deal. Just yesterday, he said it after the inauguration in a brief interview. What's the difference in the US administration approaches to Russian Ukrainian war at this moment?
Well, first, let me say that the draft age is a decision for Ukrainian government and Ukrainian people. That is not something that anybody else should be criticizing or commenting. Um, I think that there are enough women and men that are military age already that could meet manpower requirements of Ukrainian armed forces, to include the hundreds of thousands of them who are here in Germany or Poland or in Romania and other European countries. But the government has the responsibility to earn the confidence, regain the confidence of families that their son or daughter or brother or sister will not be wasted, that they will not be sent to combat until they are properly trained and equipped, regardless of what their age is. So I didn't like it when Mr. Sullivan criticized Ukraine for the draft age issue, because I felt like he was hiding or using that as an excuse for the failure of the Biden administration to do more. Now, I also never liked the Biden administration's use of the phrase "for as long as it takes," because that doesn't mean anything. That doesn't mean anything, and also I don't think anybody believes it. What matters is the U.S. government needs to say we want Ukraine to win, not because it's charity to Ukraine, but because it's in our interest. It's in the interest of the United States, of Germany, of Europe, that Ukraine is successful in stopping Russia. That's important for our security, for our economy, and also as a signal to the Chinese that we are serious about defending sovereignty, international law. uh, freedom of navigation, all these things that are under threat from Russia, and of course are also under threat from China. So that's why we should do it. Um, I don't know what the Trump administration is going to do. You know, they send different signals, which tells me that they're not entirely sure themselves. You know, Mr. Trump used to say, "I'll get this thing done in 24 hours before inauguration." Obviously, that nobody believed that, but nonetheless, here we are. And now General Kellogg, who was the envoy, has said, "Well, you know, it'll be 100 days." I mean, that's not exactly 100 days, but what he's saying is going to take some time, obviously. And I also like the fact that General Kellogg said Russia cannot be trusted. This is an important statement. If you're talking about negotiations with Russia, for the head negotiator to say, we cannot trust the Russians. That's true. I also like the fact that Mr. General Kellogg says that Ukrainian sovereignty is important. That means Crimea, of course, also. On the other hand, um, what I keep hearing is emphasis on stop the fighting now. And I'm not sure that Ukrainians are wanting to stop the fighting if that means that Russia gets to keep large amounts of Ukrainian territory. I mean, that's bad news for Ukrainians who live inside Russian occupied territory. And I'm not sure that the Kremlin, that Putin also is ready to negotiate if he thinks that the US and the West are going to give up. So, um, what could happen? Now, I don't know this, but this is as I think about the possibilities. Mr. Trump takes office now with much more leverage over Vladimir Putin than he had 4 years ago or 8 years ago. I mean, Putin is much weaker now than he was a year ago. Uh, they, his military has failed to accomplish any of its objectives. They have not been able to eliminate the Ukrainian bridgehead in Kursk. They could not save their ally, Bashar al Assad in Syria, from collapse. And their Russian economy is in big trouble. On the other hand, Mr. Trump comes in at the top of his political power. He inherits a U.S. economy that is in great shape, even if he doesn't want to admit it. He actually is inheriting a very strong American economy. And President Biden did change three policies just before he left. Sanctions on the Russian shadow fleet vessels that are used to export oil to China and India, lifted the restrictions on use of ATACMS inside Russia. And also, I think there are about $2 or $3 billion worth of aid that are already been approved that are somewhere in the pipeline that never got delivered. So President Trump can just let those three things continue without ever lifting a finger. So he has a lot of leverage. And I listened to what he said last night about Putin. That he said, "Yeah, Putin wants a deal, but you know, this war is ruining Russia. This Russia's economy is in deep trouble." This is from Trump, and so I think he realizes that he has leverage, and he also realizes that Putin is a loser right now. And so I don't know that he has the same sort of sense of awe and respect for Putin that he did 8 years ago.
You know what happens right now is if Russian, maybe if, maybe when Russian forces stop fighting in Ukraine, they will need to use those troops somewhere else because they are like a rolling machine right now, and the economy is in a bad shape, you said, but it is in a state of stagflation. As soon as those military plants stop, and as soon the printing money stops, and gas exports, mass gas exports, and oil to China, India stop, the economy will fail at that moment. So it is a great, great risk to stop the war right now because, as I see, as far as I know, the history and some economic prospects of warfare, it will be a danger to Europe at once. You were the commander of the American army in Europe. What do you see right now? What is your experience? You have much more expertise than me in this, obviously. Please tell us.
Well, thank you. First of all, my experience tells me that we should be planning for and thinking about the consequences of a collapse of the Russian Federation, that it is in danger of collapsing. And it will probably happen quickly, not on a gradual line, but something that kind of looks like dropping off a cliff, like the collapse of the Soviet Union, where we were all caught by surprise. And in hindsight, we should not have been surprised, but we were not thinking about it. So I think the United States, the West, we should all be thinking about the consequences if and when Russian Federation does collapse. What happens? You know, obviously there will be refugees, there will be crises, there will be violence in some areas, control of nuclear weapons, control of the gas and oil industry, et cetera, et cetera. So we should be thinking about that, be prepared for that if it happens, and I think it will at some point. Secondly, um, I think that it is in our interest that we help Ukraine win, and that in addition to thinking about what happens when Ukraine wins, we should be thinking about what does Ukraine need to win, and it's that commitment from the United States and our other allies. It is use of all the economic tools to crush Russia's ability to keep fighting the war, and a long-term security solution for Ukraine. Obviously, I think it's no secret. I favor Ukraine being in NATO immediately. NATO would get better the very minute that Ukraine joined. But in the meanwhile, we need to be helping Ukraine develop its own ability to defend itself. And this is one of the priorities of the organization that NATO, that U.S. Army and now NATO have created, the SAG-U, the Support and Advisory Group Ukraine, helping develop the future force of Ukraine. What does it need to look like in the future, so that it can be this very strong hedgehog, a porcupine that Russia would not want to attack.
And you are saying these things. I know that there are a couple of Rheinmetall plants, military plants, are being built right now in Ukraine. It's a secret information what they will make and where they are. But still, we have confirmation from Rheinmetall officials themselves. They are building two plants in Ukraine. We have the British BAE Systems, if I am correct, building a plant in Ukraine for artillery, and also the Nordics, Norway, Denmark, and Sweden have invested massive money into Ukrainian cruise missile industry. So there have been some developments. Do you see all this as build up for the next 10, 15 years? It's not fast. Maybe this is just the first round of a war between Ukraine and Russia, just like it was in the Middle East, several conflicts between the Arab nations and Israel before there have been established some kind of a status quo. Is that a possible future for us? Or Russia could collapse any moment and there will be no second or third round, for example?
Well, first of all, Ukraine, because of the history and the geography and the size of its and history of its neighbor, it needs to have a very good defense industry of its own. And of course, Ukraine was the heart of the defense industry for the Soviet Union for many decades. So I can imagine that Ukraine will become a very, very prosperous, successful defense industry hub and exporter for years to come. So Rheinmetall, BAE, other companies investing in Ukraine actually makes a lot of sense for long term, not just for right now. Um, I think that the all of us are learning from Ukraine. I mean, Ukraine is doing things that nobody else has had to do in history. I don't mean just a smaller country defeating a larger country, but the way they've had to do it without all the normal conventional capabilities. And so I obviously this is a little bit of hope here that countries, including my own, will invest in Ukraine's defense.
Well, that is a big hope, to be sure, and we will see. I believe we will see from the next couple of months where this all is heading, and possibly we can end our talk today with something that you would like to ask and you would like to say some of your remarks to the viewers. Maybe you have something to say really, really important about the war, the resilience, and what is going on at all with the negotiations.
Well, I think that the U.S. and Germany and UK and France and Poland and Finland, other countries have an interest in how this war ends, and that it's in our interest that it ends successfully with Ukraine stopping Russia, defeating them, and pushing them back out to the 1991 borders. Uh, but it's Ukraine that's doing all the fighting, and so ultimately, President Zelensky and the Ukrainian people will have to decide at what point is it no longer worth continuing to fight? Um, and that'll be a very difficult decision because if Russia is not defeated and Putin remains in power, then we know that within a couple of years, they will have rearmed, rebuilt, prepared to come back again. So um, I think getting the long-term foundations in Ukraine right for armed forces, for defense industry, for the population will be very important, especially if we don't have an outcome where Russia is defeated and leaves. But we should be thinking, how do we prepare for the resumption, which will happen in 2 or 3 years, unfortunately. And this is where the government really has to um, earn the confidence of people that their lives of their sons and daughters won't be wasted, but that they'll be properly trained and equipped. Um, but I am so impressed with what I have seen of Ukrainian soldiers. I have many Ukrainian friends, and what Ukraine has accomplished is because not of tanks or drones, but it's because of the heart and the intelligence of Ukrainian people, both uniform as well as the civilian population. So this is why I remain optimistic.
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Hodges, for being with us today and commenting on all these important questions. They will make a couple of good headlines, I believe, especially about the possible collapse of Russia and the long term of defense of Ukraine. And yeah, I'm really surprised about your stance about Ukraine joining NATO, as I have heard from many, many people from the West that no, we don't want Ukraine in NATO because it will provoke Russia to attack again. And possibly the peace through strength, the new strategy that is being announced at this moment in the United States administration, will bear some real and good fruit. So thank you very much again
Yeah.
for being with us.
Okay. Well, we should quit worrying about what the Russians think are doing. We should make them worry about what we're doing.
That is fascinating. Being from reactive to proactive policy. That is what we need. Thank you very
Exactly.
much. Have a nice
Right.
evening, Mr. Hodges. It was great.
Thank you very much.
So it was Mr. Ben Hodges, the former commander of the US Army Europe, in UATV studio, talking to us about all these intriguing and interesting questions.